Let's talk about this Rasmussen thing. Check this out.
Yeah.
So we have this poll from Rasmussen Reports. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? The media are truly the enemy of the people. Agree. White people, 56%. Black people, 63%. Other non-white, 60%. This is good. Look at this. Democrats, 37%. Whoa. I got to be honest. 37% of Democrats saying the media is the enemy of the people. That's not bad. I thought it would be less than that.
That's more than
unaffiliated, 61%. Those are the voters the GOP needs. The GOP is 76%, but here's the biggest one. Among all voters, 58% of people think the media are the enemy of the people. Now, I think insofar as it pertains to the Democratic voter, it probably includes us and Fox News and other channels to a certain degree. But let's be real. When people talk about the media, they're only ever referring to us if they're specifically addressing podcasts and independent channels and things like that. So I got to say, man, Curtis, you're somebody who watches news all day, every day. I think most people who watch this show get it, but I'm curious your thoughts on why it is that the majority of voters in this country, at least according to this poll, think the media are truly the enemy of the people.
Right. And the overarching point on this is it's all self-inflicted. Entirely self-inflicted. And that's the biggest problem that I think a lot of these corporate media folks and organizations don't understand, and they refuse to acknowledge. And if they do, they're continuing to lie, which is they think that somehow we are responsible, independent media, nonprofits, conservatives, just people that aren't part of their Borg, for lack of a better term.
Borg.
Yeah, I'm part of the Borg, for lack of a better term. And they've made so many mistakes over the years, and they're constantly saying that if they make a mistake, we always correct it. No, you didn't. I mean, how do you make up for thousands of minutes, which we cataloged on ABC, CBS, and NBC looking at the Russia investigation?
Remember when Cuomo pretended to be in quarantine?
Yeah, Cuomo pretending to be in quarantine. I mean, you can look at big examples, you can look at small examples, and you go back to the bigger, more prominent ones of Dan Rather in 2004, making up things about George W. Bush's National Guard service. You can look at Jason Blair making up stories about the DC sniper case, and that doesn't even have to do with like a regular political story. It's just journalism gone wrong. People making things up. Fareed Zakaria, he's a CNN host. He's been caught multiple times plagiarizing.
Wow, really?
It doesn't matter. Brian Williams, obviously, is another example. So again, this goes to this point of a refusal to acknowledge that the reason people think you are the enemy of the people is because of your own behavior. And then the other last point is just a complete detachment from what you're covering and how it's not what the people are looking for. So this things together. And I think in this, all the points that I've just made goes to the fact of whether you agree with the term or not. I think no matter what you think, you should be able to accept the fact that people feel this way, and that the reasons for it are totally valid.
I've long thought, how much easier would life be if I just made a Minecraft channel? No, I'm only somewhat joking, because I tell people, look, success comes from hard work and drive, passion, and there's a combination of other things. Your abilities. You need some natural talent, but for the most part, I think hard work can bring perseverance, brings success. And I'm just like, if I allocated 16 hours a day into Minecraft videos or whatever video game, we'd probably doing way better. But upon hearing this, I'm just like, man, if we on this show really were what the media try to smear us as, grifters just pandering to an audience, we could be making so much money if we went full MAGA or full anti-Trump. If we just played the dirty games and made up fake news like CNN does, we'd have all of the best thumbnails. I mean, to be honest, we have the Cast Castle vlog, right? Mm-hmm. And this is meant to be more comedic. It's meant to be silly. It's not news. It's semi-fictional. We had a bit where the last time Luke left the castle, the house blows up, just as a gag. They're gags. But it's funny because when the videos are fictional, when they're specifically jokes, people like clicking them more. People like being entertained. So when, we're producing a show that's not news, you can just easily see, you can just make up jokes that people will click. When it comes to news, and we're trying to be as honest and frame things to the best of our abilities, it's hard to attract people with straightforward, just like, here's what happened. That's what I think CNN and other media outlets figured out a long, long time ago. Everybody knows it. So these people who listen to CNN, who believe in these Democrat voters, and are told by the likes of Brian Stelter that, Fox News is the evil propaganda, and Jake Tapper saying, don't read the WikiLeaks emails, you're not allowed. These are people who are, anybody who tells you not to read the news or watch other channels is trying to rip you off to make money off your ratings. And that's what Brian Stelter did.
And I think I should be clear too, that Newsbusters, a lot of us on staff look at all kinds of media sources, not just for a living, but we want to know what everyone is doing. We'll watch your show. We will watch the corporate media. We will read the physical newspapers and print publications because we're old boomers. Like they're literally or at heart, But in just the other week, you had the president of NBC saying that we're ferociously defending the idea that it's possible to be objective and nonpartisan. Our mission is to illuminate and not advocate. What a joke that is.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of high-mindedness and just arrogance. And I think that's another one of the biggest things that people have problems with. They have such arrogance. You look at the Jake Tappers of the world, Brian Stelters, Joy Reid, Nicole Wallace, Rachel Maddow. They have such they think so
hubris.
highly of themselves. They love smelling their own farts. I mean, we're rapidly approaching, if not already there, in that territory with these people. It's pretty insidious, and yet somehow they continue to live in their bubbles, and yet they continue to be surprised when things happen and people vote, for people other than their candidates.
It's really weird that they're in this bubble, and they've isolated themselves, and they're ejecting people from it. It's like it kind of feels like they're trying to get that last little drop of olive oil from the olive. Everybody's always like, you got to get the extra virgin olive oil, because that's when they take the olive, it's fresh and the oil comes right out. And then like the regular stuff you get for the bargain bin price is when it's a dried, withered husk, and they're just squeezing whatever they can. That's what the media is. And the audience is that dried, withered husk. But there are people who still believe it. You'd think after 7 years of Russia, Ian, Russia.
I was thinking
people would be like, it was never true. Wake.
If Stelter came out and was like, ladies and gentlemen, the sky over Ireland is red, you'd have hundreds of thousands of people believe it just because Stelter said it. Well, and then the next day they'd come out and they'd be like, correction, the sky was not red, but they wouldn't see it. And people would go on believing that the sky was red over Ireland.
They wouldn't correct it.
Some people might though, or whoever, the Independent, or like, I don't know, random article like The Hill will come out and be like, correction, it was not actually red. Stelter was lying. But though they wouldn't see that stuff. They only watch Stelter.
And yet what's interesting is that's what they project about people who don't follow them, like the conservatives, libertarians. That's what they say. Chris Matthews, memorably, I recall when I would watch his show before I had to watch Joy Reid's show, they replaced them. He had this thing that said Trump's voters are the kind of people who, if he told them, yes, the sky isn't blue, people would believe them. If they're looking up movies to watch, to go see, and they say, Trump tells them the movie's at 6 and it's actually at 7, the people would show up at 6. I mean, it's a classic example of projection, when that's actually how CNN viewers view themselves, that somehow they're still watching CNN and the rest of us have totally moved on. And they're just the good news is they're continuing to shrink, but yet that small segment that's still left continues to view us as dangerous people. Like to your point about Joe Rogan and Sanjay Gupta, he went in thinking he was about to get attacked, and it was perfectly fine.
I talked to Joe about that when I went on a show, and he was just like, he was just trying to be funny, and I was like, oh man, Joe, you're such a nice guy. Yeah, I'm like, is he, dude? Isn't it kind of? I'll say this, like Joe's trying to be a nice guy. I think Joe genuinely wants people to kind of calm down and work things through. But I'm like, isn't it kind of dangerous when a media organization publishes a piece in which they entertain the possibility that Joe would jump the table and throttle someone's neck, even if it's supposed to be a joke? Like, Sanjay Gupta is not a comedian. So I have no problem with him being funny and trying to make jokes. I have no problem with, people get mad at me all the time because like I post nonsense on Twitter. And then when they're like, people actually believe you when you say this stuff, and I'll be like, well, that's their problem. Like, right. If you were a comedian, I'd understand. And I'm like, I don't care, dude. People can follow me. So Sanjay Gupta making a joke, I totally get. But the idea that the joke exists signals that there are people who genuinely fear this, fear Joe and think him as some kind of bad person who would do something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would actually say something, it's arguably far more insidious, that I think I can say definitively, based on the people I know within the industry, that there are good people at these networks that they know what they're doing is wrong and that it's a bit.
Bill Maher,
yeah,
and that Barry Weiss thing, they know. Come on, they've known the whole time. They're criticizing the lockdowns and everything now, but there's no way Bill Maher and Barry Weiss didn't know what was going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that the apocalyptic images, even if that should have done it for them from the very beginning. But
what images?
Were just like the empty stores, empty streets, just the idea of that, that people just life came to a stop.
But so these are public figures. But imagine the staff at Real Time with Bill Maher. Imagine the staff at CNN, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. Like these are people, they know what's going on the whole time. They don't speak out. They don't speak up.
Yeah, and they know that people who disagree with them are capable of being good people. That people who are ideologically opposed to them are their family members, their neighbors, their spouses in some cases, people that they go to church with, people that they went to high school or college with. And that's what really gets me fired up, that these people go on television and they paint such a picture that they almost want to gaslight these people into thinking that, your friend, your neighbor next door who doesn't vote straight D is some domestic terrorist. And it's so wrong. And yet Joy Reid and all the rest continue to pile on, and no one says anything. You don't see CNN speaking up whenever something happens on MSNBC. You don't really hear that. It's just the gentleman's agreement between all of them that they're not going to criticize each other.
Yeah, it's funny too, but their key demo ratings are below 100K. So,
right.
So the relevance is.
I have an interesting point to that Breonna Keeler had her role. They're rotating different people to replace Fredo Cuomo at CNN. Her show last week, through the first 3 days, I looked at Nielsen's numbers. She lost to shows like My 600-Pound Life, People Puzzler on Game Show Network, Westerns such as Gunsmoke, Cheyenne, and
are these like particularly bad shows or something?
Well, no, I'm
ragging on the Westerns.
Andy Griffith Show. Yeah. Really, it spans the spectrum. Really, Property Brothers, the Chip and Joanna Gaines channel. Magnolia Network, a number of shows on there.
They got, you were saying before, they got Jim Acosta on CNN right now. Is that what it is?
Yeah, now it's Jim Acosta. And with Breonna Keeler, they renamed the 9 p.m. hour Democracy in Peril. Democracy in Peril?
Really?
Like, what are you talking about? Like, there's so many other things going on in the world, and yet you're catering to the small audience that, whatever John Avalon, who does this reality check segment, or Mark Elias wants.
Right.
Saying this is such important work that every American needs to tune in.
You think Acosta is going to do well in the ratings?
Well, the first day's numbers are in, and he was the second least watched show in all of CNN. New Day, which airs 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, was the only show that Acosta beat.
Wow.
In the day's
second
ratings.
least of all CNN shows.
Of all CNN shows.
Wow, Yikes. That makes me feel pretty good, honestly. I was worried. I'm like, he might actually pull in the views because he's like, because he might get hate watch, and
Yeah, I mean, Greg Kelly with Newsmax was 2/3 of the way to Jim Acosta's viewership.
Oh man.
With Newsmax.
Wow, on Newsmax. And Newsmax, didn't they get pulled from like a bunch of providers?
Yeah. The LA Times has reported that they weren't able to I believe 3 different cable providers, and he still pulled in over 350,000 viewers last night, whereas Acosta had 500,000.
Yeah, but that was mostly old people, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, once you separate it out, I mean, that's true for a lot of them. Once you split out the 25 to 54 demographic,
he's going to have like 70,000 in the key demo.
Exactly, and that's
what is it? 25 to 54.
Yeah, 25 to 54.
That means most of these people watching are in their late 50s. Mm-hmm. They're going to be aging out,
or 60 or 70. Really,
many of them will retire. They'll still vote for the next 15, 20 years or whatever. I guess by life expectancy, we're talking about 15 to 17 years.
Yeah,
like 72.
And we're at a point now where last year New Day and Brian Stelter were losing shows like Peppa the Pig, Paw Patrol.
Whoa. I mean, but come on, Paw Patrol's legit.
Paw Patrol is
firefighter dog.
Yeah, you can actually learn. You actually learn things on that show. You actually learn things. Moonshiners on Discovery Channel.
That's
fun.
awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
I looked on. Oh, this says that CNN wants Jim Acosta as the host of Democracy in Peril. Is that right, or were you saying Brianna Keeler?
Well, she had last week, and Jim Acosta's on this week.
Democracy in Peril.
Dude, that's real bad propaganda to put out to a country that might be struggling right now.
And of course, and they put, I believe the way the color scheme works is blue. They put the Democrats in Democracy, then in is white, and then red is Peril.
To be fair, Ian, we're nobody's watching it.
Red,
so.
white, and blue, baby.
It's just,
let's sell some tickets.
It's a bunch, it's a bunch of older people who are. I love that meme. The left is like Fox News just scares the elderly, and I'm like, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, I don't know. It's like that's all CNN does right now. If you watch Tucker. What did you learn in the past week? That M&Ms aren't sexy anymore? Bravo, sure Tucker. That was a ridiculous segment. I think it was very dumb. But it's not scaring old people. And Tucker's got massive youth key demo viewership. So Tucker talks about a wide range of things. He challenges the establishment. My personal opinion is I think when it comes to cable TV, Tucker's the best. Not that I think he's perfect, and I don't think anybody is.
No.
But I'm not a fan of, I put it this way. Across the board with all of the cable TV stuff, Tucker is the only one who gets like a C+ for me, and everyone else is like a D- or an F.
He had Jimmy Dore on last week,
awesome.
and let Jimmy just explode in a rage of fire. It was amazing. And then at the end, he was like, "Jimmy Dore, ladies and gentlemen."
Yeah, it's grewhy
Jimmy doing what Jimmy does,
and that's why in the people that calling for censorship, when you guys have my colleague Dan Gaynor on, and why I always say things like the internet and social media are a net positive is because it allows this proliferation of all these different alternative forms of media. Whereas before you had 3 networks that had newscasts in the morning and in the evening, and they went off air overnight. They didn't even have things in prime time. They really didn't have capabilities to break in when there would be big stories at night or the middle of the afternoon. They really didn't have the same amount of resources. Whereas now you have all these different options for all these niche kinds of topics, and advocating for all these different positions. And why would you want to get rid of that?
Yeah,
you're upset because you're losing control. And if you're somebody like Jeff Zucker, you're not able to control America from your little green room.
Radio is still really popular. Because people drive their cars, people listen to the radio, and you've got satellite radio, and people don't understand it actually is fairly popular. You buy new cars these days, a lot of them come with satellite radio, so a lot of these older formats still exist in some form, and they still have some kind of pull. So we can sit here and we can laugh about CNN's ratings being in the gutter, but I got to be honest, YouTube props them up. YouTube puts them on the front page. So we can be critical of them and say their medium is dying, but they will be put on life support because that brand has some kind of value. When CNN launched, like the mid-'80s? Mm-hmm. Initially, it was just like, what is this fly-by-night, stupid cable trash? But nowadays, you've got, I was born in 86, so I grew up with CNN always being there. And that matters. It's legacy now to the younger generations. No matter what happens to their ratings, someone's going to want that. And they'll try and put it wherever they can. But I do think CNN, like many companies, will eventually just... AOL used to be the big game in media, in internet. Now it's gone. Facebook could potentially, go that route. We don't know. A lot of companies that have been around since the early 1900s changed their name and they continue to exist.
CNN's owned by AT&T. So we may as well just call CNN AT&T from now on.
Well, and they're about to be spun off to Discovery.
Oh, jeez.
And that's...
As in CNN's getting sold to Discovery?
Yes, AT&T is they're offloading CNN.
Oh, yeah. I remember
and they've been trying to offload DirecTV, look to offload them as well. So, and that's what's really interesting that some people are holding out hope for in 2022 when Discovery more or less takes over, if they're going to clean house. One of their lead investors, I think even somebody on their board, was on CNBC a couple months ago and suggested that we need to get CNN back to the CNN that people were called, that they had fond memories of growing up. I guess so primarily like Gulf War age people that were watching CNN in the early 90s, in the 80s, a little bit after it launched, once people realized what it actually is. But at that point, you got to really clean house if you want to do that.
The challenge is that straight news, dime a dozen. We've got so many people on the ground with cell phones filming and broadcasting that when it comes to straight reporting, it's fairly easy to get. Now, there are some things that we've seen at timcast.com that are underserved, certain areas. Mm-hmm. So march coverage, protest, and political action stuff often is extremely underreported. So you might get a reporter from a local news outlet will show up, film a few segments, and then put like a 30-second package together. It doesn't really give you the actual view of what's going on. And that's something I, got started doing. So we try to do that. We try to say, let's get someone on there. Let's do like a 20 to 30 minute actually talking to people and figure out if we can get a broad view of things. But for the most part, it's very, very difficult to monetize. It's very, very difficult to provide a service in an area where it's just saturated with citizen journalism. So you can see it. CNN tries to do documentary. They try to be like Vice. They get Reza Aslan. You know, he ate human brain. Yeah. You're aware of that, right?
Yes, and that was...
desperation.
That was desperation, and spoiler alert, it didn't work out for him. That CNN, one of the few times they've actually gotten rid of someone, that was when that...
CNN ran a show where a human ate another human's brain.
And then that was a
small piece.
That was too far for them. That we finally found out where's the line for CNN.
Yeah, seriously, that's crazy. They were like, I can only imagine the executives are like, eating human brain didn't work for us. Maybe we can accuse the president of being a Russian spy for 5 years, 7 years.
Yeah,
kind of works.
And just roll with it. Just make that.
Yeah, problem solved.
Yeah, that one's technically it's based in the realm of possibility. Like, sure. The Russians exist, and
true, yes.
Trump exists,
and Trump exists,
and he called somebody
possible.
Once, in Russia.
They can just make up everything and roll with it and never correct.
Just Mad Libs at this point,
it's great, yeah.
Mad Libs you love,
and
I think that's why people really dislike CNN in particular and the broadcast networks versus say MSNBC or even Fox News, because CNN passes itself off as, based on nostalgia. They're hoping people continue to support them based on nostalgia and basic news of the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Proper context and perspective. That's what they're hoping people, fall for. But you very quickly see, even just on their chyrons alone, so you don't even have to have the sound on to know that it's a total joke. And so I would say I'm more likely to be able to stomach MSNBC than I am CNN, just because you know what they're getting. They're not trying to hide what they are, and you just go from there.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Now, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.